I've got a question, everybody. What do you think of when you think of a prosperous America? And without saying, oh, everything that's not today. Maybe you think of a country with a thriving economy, with booming technological power, and with everyone achieving staggering success in everything they set out to achieve. That may very well be, but would you believe that all of this boils down to the process that begins at age 5 with children scribbling in coloring books and playing with building blocks? Because that is indeed the case. And this process is known simply as getting a complete and thorough education.
I think it's very important that the U.S. strives for the best education for all of our students, because the health of our economy, of our country, really depends on it. That unless we're preparing graduates who are actually skilled and ready to be successful in work and in college, that we just really are not going to be able to have the workforce that we need, and our country just won't be as successful.
We know those communities that invest heavily in education suffer less crime, pay less welfare, and we know the individuals benefit, the students benefit with a good education. The more education you get, the higher your income will be.
There is definitely no doubt. Success in education strongly reflects how our students will do in their later professions, how much they will contribute to their communities, and how they will keep our country competitive on an international level, the need for which is greater now than it ever has been before. Now, considering all this, you might say that it's definitely no secret that our country must strive for the greatest education possible. However, given the country's management of this system, it seems like this fact actually is something of a secret to a whole lot of people.
American schools in particular, by world standards, not doing so well. If you look at the whole basket of U.S. education and all the rankings that take place about how the United States is doing, the country does not come out much above average. And I think there's some deeply seated historical reasons for that, and this country, if it's going to be competitive, has to come to terms with some of those issues.
From sharply descending in international rankings to the high school dropout rate now being labeled a national crisis, the American education scene is underperforming in many ways, and our nation now must confront the challenge of restoring it to a more prominent state. Well, good luck with that, you might be saying. How's that supposed to happen with, for one, the nation's economy being what it is? Well, despite this financial turmoil, the problem isn't really that American schools aren't getting enough money, it's that they're mishandling it in many different ways. This includes funding not being evenly spread amongst districts, schools failing to financially support and train their staff, and not putting enough of their money towards strictly academic purposes. No amount of our nation's budget is going to do much help if all of this remains as it is.
We spend more than $500 billion every single year in kindergarten through 12th grade education, which is vastly more than the GDPs of most countries in the world. If you look at how much we were spending per student in 1970 compared to today, even after controlling for inflation, it's more than tripled. So we're spending more and more and more money, and yet a lot of our results are the exact same. So increases in funding, flatlining in terms of results. So what we need to do is caution people against thinking that we can spend our way out of these problems.
Overall, the United States needs to stop simply throwing money at schools and guide them towards using their funds to more productive effects. In any case, something definitely must be done to make students not feel so disengaged with their studies, as they now increasingly seem to be. In recent years, American students have taken a sharp downturn in their performance in crucial subjects like math and science, both of which they were leading in at one time. Along with that, the nation's dropout rate now stands at around 30%, with another 7,000 students quitting high school each day. Perhaps having better quality teaching would make students more enthusiastic about staying in school. Unfortunately, this is yet another area in which America seems to be lagging. Studies show that throughout the country, many schools do not get the top tier of college graduates to become teachers and have somewhat poor standards for accepting their instructors. And yet, how are students supposed to master their material without qualified instructors to guide them? It seems that many Americans, teachers and students alike, are going to have to change their attitudes about the importance of a good education.
the next step is to just make significant investments in our teaching staff. So making sure that when we have excellent standards in place that they're trained to use them and to make sure that the students are learning what they need to learn.
A combination of understanding among kids and their families that education is important, and an understanding that you have to get the best teachers, and the combination of those two can be quite powerful.
Is that combination powerful enough for everybody, though? Many of America's results in education are wildly disproportionate amongst people of different race, ethnicity, location, and wealth. To cite an example, only about 17% of all the students in America ranging from age 16 to 24 are Latinos, and yet Latinos account for over 40% of all dropouts in that age range. Even white students, who make up 60% of such students, don't account for as many dropouts that age as Latinos do. Now, a country as hugely diverse as the United States is simply cannot claim to have improved its quality of education unless it deals with this alarming gap in achievement.
We have been about trying to change education, and we've done a lot, and we've seen success and failure, and what we really have seen most is that we started and created campfires as excellence, as one of my colleagues used to describe it. He said we build all these little campfires of excellence, but the design of a campfire is that it shouldn't spread. And what we really need is a brush fire. We need something that moves across the system.
I think one of the positive things that's happened in education over the past 5 to 10 years is a focus on making sure that all students are doing well, that it's not just the average, on average a school is doing well, but that really looking at every group of students, low-income students, students of different ethnic backgrounds, that everyone is doing well.
So families care deeply about their kids and their kids' education. It doesn't matter if you're black or white, if you're poor or you're rich. Enabling these families to get the type of education they want is the challenge for us.
In conclusion, ever since Thomas Jefferson declared his entire country free in 1776, America has been centered on the idea that the same rights and privileges ought to be given to all of its people. That is the mentality that must be present whenever we are dealing with education, which in essence is what allowed Jefferson to craft that historic document, what has enabled the success of generations of Americans since, and is what our nation must invest in heavily if it is to succeed in the years to come. The wiser approach to this matter that I've now discussed could potentially have extraordinary results. We're just going to have to wait and see what happens.